Okay, hello everybody. I'm going to get started. I know we have a few people joining still, but I only have half an hour. I would like to perform a demo as well of a few scenarios at the end, so I will get started. So thank you for joining. So good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're from. Just wanted to welcome you to this session focused on automating the generation of your reports. We'll have a look at some of the existing processes you may have in place. So I kind of cover a little bit briefly sort of what I mean by a report, just so everybody's on the same page, and look at some of the existing manual or tool-based processes you may have in place for the generation of your reports. And then I kind of focus on how you can automate a lot of those steps using our DocShifter reports kind of plus package as well. I'll do that basically by highlighting what we can do, but focus on demonstrating that with a live product demonstration with some specific scenarios, and then draw some conclusions at the end as well. So with that, just before I get started, just wanted to let you know, as we sometimes do, we're running a little raffle, if you like. Every 25th, well, it's not a raffle, every 25th registrant that signs up for the event will receive a small gift on behalf of DocShifter. It's not going to be a car. If it is, it'll be a little Matchbox car with the DocShifter logo on it. So it's nothing huge, but just don't be surprised if you do receive an email from us asking for your address. It would basically be for us to send you that small gift. So hopefully some of you will receive that email shortly. Just by way of introduction, just wanted to explain, obviously what we're going to focus on here is how you can leverage our tech, which is a platform used for content transformation for more than just converting your documents. In many cases, rendering platforms can be used to pull content from many different repositories, whether you're using legacy Documentum environments or folders, file shares, whether you're using SharePoint or Viva repositories or Kara from Generis, whatever platform you're using and whatever file formats you may have beyond pure Office formats like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. Some sort of CAD diagrams, image formats, etc. All of those should be able to be converted from basically any repository. A lot of the capabilities go beyond just a conversion. You can then check the content, and we've ran different webinars and how our tool can be used to do this, how you can then check the Word content for various issues. So before you begin converting it, you can check it for content related and formatting issues as well. You can ensure that any image-based content is converted into text searchable content as well. So it OCRs the content. How you can merge multiple documents together or split documents up to make sure they don't exceed file size limits, etc. as well. I can apply headers and footers and add pagination into your results as well as adding watermarks to ensure that people are aware that content is still confidential or in draft, or include pieces of information about the document, who the authors were, etc. as well. Add detailed bookmarks to ensure that whoever's reviewing the content or kind of using that content can actually sort of navigate through smoothly as quickly as possible, as well as adding things like cover pages, tables of contents to individual documents, ensuring no security is applied or adding security if you want as part of your internal processes, and validating the content at the end to ensure that it meets the needs of however that PDF file is going to be used. Once you've done that, obviously the way that is used, it can be prepared to be used for data extraction. We don't do extraction, but those formats, those typically have specific file formats, report generation, ensuring it's used ready to share with health authorities or to be stored in a longer term archive. So really the rendering platform is typically used for many of those elements, or can be used for many of those elements. And what we're going to look at is how we can leverage that in a slightly different way. So what we're looking at doing is creating workflows, and I'll show you live in the product shortly, that basically pull different pieces of that functionality together in different ways in workflows to basically pull the content and apply different elements to ensure that your reports are created automatically. But ultimately, we can have different workflows that do different things depending on where the content's stored, the metadata that's available, etc. as well. The important thing here is that what we're talking about is fully automated. So these workflows run in the background. No user has to invoke them. These just happen when documents reach or your content reaches a certain lifecycle state. Everything happens automatically in the background without any human interaction, removing any manual steps. So that's what we're going to look at doing here. What I'm going to show you is going to be quite quick. It's obviously going to be moving through the content quickly. So if you want to see more detail, but like to have your own personalized session, where we can maybe talk and focus a little bit more on your specific scenarios, please let us know. The URL should be in the Zoom chat window, where you can reach out if you like, and we can obviously speak to you one-on-one about your specific case. What I mean by a report is ultimately one or more files, individual documents, maybe of different formats, that need to be merged together into either a single PDF, or in some cases, multiple PDFs that are enriched in some way as well. So that can mean you have a cover page added at the beginning that includes a report title, so information about who the authors were, when it was created, what its purpose is, etc. A table of contents may be added that spans all of the documents that were included in the report. There may be separate individual documents that may have their own tables of contents, but the report itself needs to have an overall table of content created as well. So you may need to add these tables of contents, report level, and then things that like your obviously consistent look and feel. Give it a consistent pagination scheme that runs through the entire report, so you don't end up with lots of separate document level page numbers, but they go 1 to 10, and then the next document 1 to 10, all within a single report. You can apply this consistent page number pagination scheme across all of them. Obviously, things like bookmarks as well, you need to ensure that the bookmarks span across all of the documents as well. On top of that, you could add things like watermarks, just to kind of, if you like, highlight what kind of status the content it is in, and so on as well. On top of that, you want to make sure that your hyperlinks continue to work once those documents are merged together into single PDF files. They may be separate documents, but when they're merged together into single PDFs, you need to ensure that hyperlinks continue to function as you would expect. So with that, obviously there's various needs as well. So depending on if you're coming from the regulatory group or if you're looking across the enterprise, obviously different departments have their own needs in clinical, various types of clinical reports, study reports, etc. IMPDs, merging multiple very granular documents to make sure you meet the granularity needed for CTD-based publishing. So you can take very granular documents, merge them together to create the correct leaf levels you need for your submissions. You can actually use them for entire submissions as well, for 510K or device submissions, where the guidelines aren't quite as strict as within pharma biotech, where you have the whole eCTD structure. So you could create entire submissions potentially using report tools as well, and we'll have a look at that. And there may be other ad hoc reports, obviously, within reg. But across the whole enterprise, you may have the need to generate standard operating procedures, annual reports, training guides, where ultimately the content may be created across multiple documents and images, and then you need to pull them together to create the actual report as well, or the guide, depending on what it is. So there's various needs across the enterprise. So if you have a look at what the current process may be, today it typically falls into one of two buckets, either a very manual process where you're using tools like Acrobat, you're simply dragging, manually creating PDFs, you're merging them using Acrobat functionality, then you're adding, creating tables of contents manually, including them into the content and adding the hyperlinks, etc. as well. A very manual process. Or you may have a tool that wasn't originally designed or specifically designed for submissions, for reports. It may have been designed for submissions, for example. And then you're talking about using a sledgehammer to crack a nut somewhat. You're very much using a tool designed for another purpose to generate what are ultimately simpler reports in many respects. So typically fall into one of those two buckets. What that means is you typically have a number of steps. Each one of them typically performed either manually or with a tool. You have to pull together all the individual documents, convert each one into PDF, whether that's with a rendering tool or manually using Acrobat on your desktop. They each need to be prepared to be pulled together. Before you merge them, you want to make sure that they are correct. And if you're talking regulatory, you may want to ensure they meet the compliance requirements as well individually before you pull them together. You need to sort them into the correct order and merge the content into single PDF. Add cover pages potentially at the beginning if you need them, depending on the use case. Paginate across the entire report. apply other information into your headers and footers. So you may have other information, including, the title, the section title or whatever it may be, or the authors of that content, depending on its status. You also may want to ensure that the bookmarks are obviously accurate. You've got all the bookmarks you expect across all the documents that make up the report. Tables of contents get added at the beginning. Watermarks get applied if need be. Then ensure that the final result is actually compliant, meets the compliance requirements if it's a compliant requirement document. And then it's saved into whatever repository you need to store that in. Typically, if that's done manually, that can be made up, be performed by multiple tools or plugins, and every single step may be manual. Even if it's using a tool, typically each of them is maybe then another tool, function within your publishing tool as well. Some of them may be a little bit automated, but typically you normally need to make some decisions somewhere, and there's some human interaction involved. What ultimately that leads to is what's ultimately a relatively slow process. It's resource intensive. You need to have multiple people working on it potentially. And there's obviously a lot of manual steps involved. And anywhere where there's manual steps, it introduces an element of risk. The whole procedure is quite complex, using multiple tools quite often, multiple plugins, which leads to a training burden as well, ensuring that people that are creating relatively simple reports are trained on all the tools or a complex publishing tool just to generate these relatively straightforward reports. So it does lead to a number of challenges across the way. With that, I just wanted to ask a quick poll question, if that's okay from everybody. Could you just let me know whether or not right now what kind of tools are you using to create your reports? Are you using submission tools that were designed, for submissions to create your reports? Are you using manual methods like Acrobat and other manual methods as well? Or do you have some other kind of report type tools as well? And there are some out there, so just curious what everybody is using. So answers coming in right now, it seems to be a bit of an even split between submission publishing tools and manual methods. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I think pretty much it's almost an even split right now between submission publishing tools and manual methods. So thank you for your responses. That's useful to know. I'll just end this quickly. With that, just have a look at how we can automate, the whole report creation process as well. So with that, what we're looking at doing is I explained obviously what, taking content from multiple repositories of different types, how a rendering tool can include various of these elements. What we're looking at doing for reports is pulling some of those capabilities together at a slightly different level, rather than treating them on individual documents and applying a header and footer or bookmarks and cover pages and tables of contents to individual documents. We're also able to merge multiple documents together as part of the capabilities of the rendering platform. So if you add that step, you can then apply all of these elements to that collection of documents as well. The difference is the whole rendering process is fully automatic. There's no human interaction whatsoever. So we're going to perform all these tasks fully automatically instead. The only step that's manual at the moment, and even this could be automated moving forward as well, with some sort of machine learning, AI, etc. as well. We can certainly sort of look to automate this step as well. But right now, you need to define what is the content, the collection of content that you want to combine together in the report, and define that either in, you're talking about file shares or SharePoint in simple zip files. If you're using a controlled DMS like Documentum, you may have virtual documents that define the structure, the order, and the structure of the report content. Similar in Viva, if you're using binders as well, or you could have folder structures that create the structure for you as well. So that section you just need to perform, say what needs to be included. The rest can be set up in a workflow. A workflow, these automated workflows in the background can be set up to define what should happen to those collections of content when they're available, and when should we actually create this content, this merge, this actual report output. How should it be created? What options do I want, etc. And where should the results go? That's what we're going to set up in our workflows. So basically, we're going to perform all the steps that we spoke about before manually. there's this one step being performed manually, creating the zip, the binder, or the virtual document. Then all these steps, the workflow, the merge, the cover pages, headers, footers, pagination, tables of contents, watermarks, splitting the results up, making sure everything's compliant and saving it into the repository. All of that is done fully automatically. We leverage all the metadata, any metadata that's available on our source content, the report itself. We can use that metadata to say how exactly should, in what way should the content be converted? In what way which options do we want? Do we need a cover page? Do we not? Depending on the type of report, you may or may not need all of the elements, and it can decide that automatically by leveraging the metadata available to it. That's what we're going to look at doing with DocShifter reports in this case. So what I want to show you is some examples live in the tool. And basically, I'm going to show you this content, but I'll show it to you live instead. Ultimately, this is just so you have a hard copy as well. I'm going to create workflows that will allow different types of reports to be created, depending on the type of report, and may include slightly different elements in there that are needed for each of the different use cases. And of course, I could have multiple workflows running, doing very different things in different locations for my content across my repositories. So ultimately, I'm going to define all of this. So I will show you this in a moment. Ultimately, I'm going to be creating results, from, my collections. In this simple case of SharePoint, I have a zip file, and I'm just creating results as either individual PDFs or potentially multiple PDFs to kind of contain only sections of the reports, so they're broken up, so they don't exceed file size limitations, etc. as well. And the same thing, obviously, if you're looking at Viva, that can then go back into Viva as either a rendition to your binder, or it can be created as completely new objects within the Viva repository as well. Same thing with Documentum, etc. This is just showing you a couple of examples. With that, what I want to do is quickly show you my DocShifter environment. So I'll show you, I have, in this case, a SharePoint repository. I'm just going to show you in SharePoint right now. I have a couple of simple reports. In this case, a simple zip file. It just contains a few Word documents, but this could be a mixture of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, images, etc. But a simple zip file. I've then got an output repository. So SharePoint doesn't have the idea of renditions. So I've got an input location, and I'm just going to output everything into a specific other folder. That's it. What I also have is some metadata associated with it. So I have things like the document type, for example, processed as, available here. So I want to leverage some of these pieces of metadata to decide what options should I use when I generate the report. So quite simply, I want to use this doc type. Depending on the value of this, I may want to process that report slightly differently. So I have a workflow in place. If I just go to my list of workflows, come into my workflow here that I just prepared in advance. It's like Blue Peter. Here's one I prepared earlier for you. Ultimately, I'm monitoring, in this case, my SharePoint repository. So I'm monitoring this location in SharePoint. And again, you have different workflows that could be monitoring different locations, or this workflow could be monitoring multiple locations in SharePoint. I don't need separate workflows for them. If all the options are going to be the same, I can monitor multiple locations as well. But ultimately, I'm monitoring this location, and then I'm just checking for the value of that one piece of metadata. So I'm looking for the value of the doc type. Depending on the value, I'm going to take one of my 4 routes within this workflow. So if it's set to CTD, I'm going to take the CTD routes. If I'm taking clinical, I'm going to take the longer clinical routes, IMPD, etc. Anything else is going to go down just a simple route at the end here, which all this is going to do is create a merge of the content. It's not going to add any other elements. It's just going to merge my documents together into a single PDF. So if I start with that one, and I just take this one, I've set this to SOP right now. So in this case, it should just attempt to merge the content. In this case, it's SharePoint. So I'm just creating a trigger manually. I'm manually telling it that I want to create this report now. Obviously, that could be automated as part of your document lifecycles as well. But I'm just going to go through here. It should pick it up within about 10 seconds or so. And I should, within a few seconds, see the results, which in this case should be a single PDF file in my results file. So that's basically taken that zip file, each individual document, converted it to a compliant PDF, and then merged the content together and stored it in the repository. This is quite a simple document. So if I download this, I'd rather show you in Acrobat because that's what most people are more familiar with. Oh, sorry, not here. So if I come in here, I'm just going to open it in Acrobat for you. So in this case, all I've got is a list of each of the documents being merged together. I've not added anything. I'm just going to cancel here. I've not added any pagination to it. I've not added any cover pages or overlays or anything like that. But I do have a nice set of bookmarks that span all the documents that were merged together in this case. Excuse me. So that's the first example. I'm just merging content together and applying a set of navigational aids to navigate through them. That's all. If I now go and say, I'm just going to make this clearer, what I'll do is I shall just delete this link just to make this clear what I'm doing. If I go back to my report, I'm just going to select the next option of, for example, an IMPD. So in the case of an IMPD, what I've told it to do here, and I'm just going to send this one off to be processed while I show you. An IMPD, I said, I want to convert, I want to merge everything. But in this case, I also want to add an overlay. And the overlay that I've configured is going to add a basic page number. I can configure how that page number looks, where it appears, etc. I just want to include a simple page stamp at the bottom of my pages. So with that, if I have a look in my results folder, I should have now my PDF results. In this case, I can probably show you quickly here because this is quite straightforward. The main difference here being, I'm just going to go back actually, I'm going to download that because SharePoint never really shows things as you'd like. But in here, the only difference being that I've merged everything. I have bookmarks as I did before, but on top of that, I now have this consistent page number that applies across the entire report. So it's merged the documents and applied a consistent pagination scheme across everything. Okay, that's the second case. If I then have a look at my CTD case, so if I just going to delete this one again, just for a moment, just for clarity, if I go here, I'm going to change this to CTD. And then once I've changed that CTD, I'm going to send this one off to be processed again. If I select the CTD route, what I'm saying here is I want to create a compliant, merge everything again. In this case, I want to add a table of content that spans, that covers the entire collection of documents as well. So as well as having the bookmarks, I want a TOC at the beginning. Plus, I want the pagination added. And then because this is maybe for regulatory use, I want to ensure that the results are fully compliant as well. So I'm going to ensure that at the end, running this hi-fi step as well. So what I should have at the end is I now have another result. I'm going to download this one. In this case, I'm going to quickly open this up so you can see. So again, I've now got all my content merged, all the bookmarks again. I now have, though, a table of content at the beginning, and the look and feel of this I can configure, of course. These are all fully navigable, obviously active hyperlinks as well. I have page stamps that span the entire report as well. Okay, so depending on what you want, you can obviously configure these differently. Excellent. So that is, again, a single report only at this point. If I then go and I say, okay, now I want to do, say this is, for example, I want all the options enabled. So I'm going to switch this, make this actually a clinical report. I'm going to send this off to be processed one more time. And in this case, it's going to take the clinical route. And in that case, it's going to merge everything together. It's then going to split it up. It's going to look and say, what are my requirements in that health authority for how large my file sizes are, any limitations. And in this case, just for the demo purposes, I'm going to split it into 25 page blocks. But you could set it based on health authority requirements, whether that's 50 meg, 100 meg, 150, 180, whatever the health authority is where you're submitting, they may have slightly different requirements. You can make sure that your results don't exceed those limits, and it breaks the results up into blocks. Just here, I'm splitting into 25 pages so I can show you with a smaller example. So it's going to create multiple volumes in this case. And then want to add cover pages, and I want to add a cover page maybe at the start of each volume as well. and then add pagination. And I'm going to add a slightly different pagination here. I'm going to include the volume number as well as the page number, and then make sure everything is fully compliant, all of the output, and stored back as well. So if I look at my results now, the difference here is I've got 4 files. I've got obviously the one I created earlier, but I've now got a full volume report as well, because I told it to split it up into 25 page blocks. So I'll just download the first couple to show you. If I download this one as well, just do this. I'm going to open up the 2 files in Acrobat. And what I've got in Acrobat 1 is the first file is I've added, in this case, I've added a cover page as well. So I've added a cover page that's pulling metadata from my repository. So this isn't a static cover page that was added. This was dynamic. I created a template for how the cover page should look, and then it's pulling metadata from my repository to complete the report title, the health authority that this is going to be submitted to, who the report was last modified by, who it was created by, the dates, etc. You can pull any metadata into that cover page. Same likewise in your headers, footers as well. You can pull the metadata in wherever you like. You'll notice now my pagination stamp, as well as that, I've got my, in this case, I said I didn't want a table of contents. I could have added a table of content. I just didn't in this case. But I go and I've got now volume number, volume 1 of 4, page 1 of 26. So I've got volume numbers shown as well. And the bookmarks only for that specific volume of the report. If I go to volume 2, the second volume, same information. Obviously, my volume number is different in my cover page. This is showing you that you're now in the second volume of the report. And obviously, you see that in the page stamp of every volume as well, every page. Okay. So just some quick examples to show you how you can leverage that metadata available to you. I'm using very simple examples here to basically drive the automation, how it should be done, what options should be applied, what shouldn't, etc. as well. If I just come back here. So with that, just want to draw a couple of conclusions. Just ultimately what we're trying to do here is automate things that were performed manually before in some way, whether in a tool or with separate manual tools as well. Really reducing or removing as many of those manual steps as possible gives you more control over the results and a lot more consistency in the results that you achieve. Because you're removing those manual steps, you're also reducing your risk from human error. And obviously, because it's fully automatic, you can then include these steps, these processes in your lifecycle, your document lifecycle workflows as well. All leads to reduced QC time because you're not having to kind of cater to manual sort of steps involved. So it typically reduces your QC time involved, and the entire process is considerably quicker. So that's ultimately what I wanted to show you here. Again, very brief, just giving you a quick sort of highlight. If you'd like to sort of talk about anything in more detail, please let us know. Again, really what we're looking at doing is just fully automating anything that was manual or batch as much as possible to achieve compliance much quicker. With that, we did just have a quick poll question at the end. Again, if you want to reach out separately to ask for a separate conversation with us to talk in more detail or talk about your specific use case, please let us know. There's a poll question here just asking if you'd like us to reach out to you, just let us know. But otherwise, I want to thank you for joining. I know this was very quick. So again, there's a lot more detail that obviously we kind of didn't cover. Please just let us know. And other than that, I hope you have a very good rest of your day, wherever you are. I'll leave the poll question running for a minute or so. If you have any questions, let us know. And hopefully I'll speak to you again in a future webinar. But thanks again for joining, and hopefully speak to you again soon. Thank you.